In this lesson, we're going to be talking about how to access the data members of our class, hour, minute, second, using something called accessor methods, or sometimes more commonly called getters and setters. And you'll see why we call them those in a minute. But first of all, take a look at my main program down here. When I've declared my data members as private, as you're supposed to do to follow proper object-oriented programming procedures and encapsulation and all that, I can't directly access a private member in my program. I can compile it just fine, but when I try to run the program, notice it doesn't give me anything, it just gives me a 0. Let's go back and take a look at the code. What we need is some sort of accessor method to access that. And we do that by creating something called a getter and a setter. So I'm going to demonstrate how that works. In our class definition, we're going to create a integer method called getHour. And what it's going to do is it's going to return the hour of the time that we create, so that when I call it up, system out println dTime getHour, let's set a time here also, 19 4, whoops, we're using periods there, we should be using commas, 9 0, whoops, we don't need that. So let's compile. Whoops. Oops, I made a little typo there. Let's fix that. There we go. That'll compile. Then when I close and run this program, so there's my hour 19. So that's called a getter. Oops, I keep doing that. I'm sorry. Back to my code. And a getter is called a getter because we preface the method name with a get. If you ever move to a more professional or a more expensive IDE, integrated development environment, a lot of them will write getters and setters for you automatically. A setter then will allow us to change that value. So we're going to write this public void setHour. We have a parameter h. And again, I'm ignoring all data validation questions here. So now we have a setHour. So let me add a little prompting here. So now if we want to change this to say 9, then we can just copy this like so. Fill it in right here. Let's compile. Oh, look at that, I didn't make any syntax errors. Now let's run our program. So the original hour was 19. We got that 19 from the getHour method. I used setHour to change it to 9, and that displayed the current hour, which was changed to 9. So I'll do real quick just to finish out the class. You can see why a program could do this automatically, because it's very simple. And you'll see I made a mistake here. I left out my parameter. So let's go back and add that in. And then let me scroll this up a little bit so you can see better. There we go. And then public void set second, parameter s, and second equal s. The getters and setters now become part of your public interface, so keep in mind that if you don't want the user to modify a value, you don't have to create a setter for that particular data member. We could call it a read-only member where all you can do is return the value. You can't actually change it. If you want to do both, then you just create a getter and setter for both. So, and that's really all there is to this, but it's very convenient and very important, especially if that's what you intend, is to provide getters and setters to allow the user of your class to retrieve individual values or set individual values for each of the data members of your class, unless of course you want to leave some of them out. You don't have to include getters and setters for every data member, just the ones that you need. So that wraps up this lesson on getters and setters, and we'll move on to the next lesson where we're just going to talk a little bit about writing general class methods to perform tasks with your class objects.